Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this month's November 15th open mic night. Tonight, we're going to be speaking with Bill Tharpe with the Maryland Department of Agriculture, as well as Colleen Kiefer with NRCS Maryland. And they're going to talk with you about some of the financial incentive programs for urban and other small farms. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over to Bill Tharpe and Colleen first to introduce themselves. And then after that, we're going to hear from Bill about what MDA has cooking.
So my name is Bill Tharpe. I am the program administrator for the Small Farm and Urban Agriculture program at MDA. It's a brand new program that was established at the beginning of the year, and trying to determine different paths of financial assistance for producers that have not been eligible for programs in the past through the department. So I've been with MDA for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was a district manager for Harford County's Soil Conservation District, and I worked in that office for about 25 years. So I have a lot of conservation background, primarily on large livestock and commodity grain operations. But I have truly enjoyed this year of networking with urban and small farmers to just see the differences and what financial assistance can do to help take your operations to the next level. So I'll stop there and I'll wait until I give more detail in my presentation.
Thanks, Bill. Colleen, did you want to introduce yourself? There you are.
Hey everyone, my name is Colleen Kiefer. I am the district conservationist for Prince George's County, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore City with NRCS, which is the Natural Resource Conservation Service. I've been here since about February. I'm a former Prince George's County farmer, small scale. We did about 5 acres in Upper Marlboro many years ago, but I'm happy to be back in the county. And we have been working very hard at updating a lot of our existing practices and standards to offer better payment rates, take away some of the barriers is really the big thing. Trying to get better communication with everyone so everyone has a kind of, a more clear idea of how things work and things like that. And so I'm just happy to talk with you guys more, and great to see everyone on here.
Thanks, Colleen. And Bill, I think for some reason my meeting control bar disappeared, but I finally, it came back. So you should be able to share your screen now.
All right, can you all see that? Wait a minute.
Yes, we're good to go.
Can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
You sound great, Bill.
Can't hear you.
All righty. So, like I said, my name is Bill Tharpe. I'm with the Maryland Department of Agriculture, and I am the one who is in charge of developing financial assistance programs for the small farm and urban agriculture programs that I will get into here right now. So again, like I said, it was established back in the beginning of January of 2022. The intent of the program really was to focus on operations that have not been serviced by financial assistance programs in, from Maryland Department of Agriculture. We believe that the small farm and urban agriculture really it spans statewide, whether it's actually in an urban area, para-urban, rural, or suburban areas. I believe that these operations are hidden gems across the state that we really need to recognize and provide some technical and financial assistance to get these operations to the next level of producing healthy foods for communities, but also, restoring the natural resources of the soils and the area around the communities. Oops. So just generally speaking of what eligibility would be, you can be an individual person, you can be an organized for-profit business, and you can be not a no-profit, nonprofit. My apologies. Are all eligible to apply for the grants that will fall under my umbrella of programs. The operation can be located on agricultural or non-agricultural assessed properties. The non-agricultural assessed properties was a really big item because literally most of these, all the urban operations are statewide, are not going to be considered agriculturally assessed land by the state assessment and taxation office. So making sure that we added that into the rules and eligibility. I got that a lot, over the first 3 or 4 months of talking with different folks and different agencies, who was wanting to do more for urbanized areas, but the money was tied to rural. So wanted to make sure, or agricultural assessed land. So wanted to make sure that we added that into our rules. An operation must produce a minimum of $1,000 of gross sales, and we've added donations annually due to the fact that some of the nonprofits might end up donating everything that they grow and receive funding from another source for those donations. So it's kind of a little bit of a gray area, but we wanted to make sure that we were providing the same assistance to nonprofit organizations. And I believe Colleen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is a similar item that USDA identifies as a dollar amount of sales to be eligible for some of their programs as well. And then of course, this one should be, without being said, but the product must be grown and raised in the state of Maryland. State money needs to go to state operations. So back in the end of September, we launched the first of at least 3 or 4 programs that will fall under the Small Farm and Urban Agriculture Program. So it's a small acreage cover crop program. You're limited to 5 acres or less of cover crop to be planted. It must follow a production crop, vegetables. We've added flowers and herbs, and then the traditional crops of sorghum, soybeans, millet, hemp, and tobacco. So the way that we decided to provide the funding was we provided $1,000 per applicant, but based on actual paid costs. So we will need to see the paid invoices and things like that to then reimburse the folks to up to that $1,000 cap. And since we rolled the program out a little later than what we expected, we decided to go with a planting date for this initial sign up from between September 1st through November 30th. So as of right now, we are still accepting applications for any cover crop that has been planted between September 1st and November 30th. In future years, I believe we're going to try to figure out a way to cover the entire growing season so that maybe we will be able to provide summer cover crop funding along with the fall and winter type of cover crop. We want to make sure that anytime a cover crop's being planted after a production crop, we want to be able to provide some assistance for that that implementation. So another big one that came out of the 2022 General Assembly was the Urban Agriculture, Water, and Power Infrastructure Grant. So this was associated with House Bill 855. It was put in by Delegate Boyce from Baltimore City. This funding has been approved. It's been signed by the governor. The funding that is tied to it will be available after July 1st of 2023, and it has 4 consecutive fiscal years of funding attached to it. The one item that is still kind of up in the air is understanding what the United States Census Bureau delineates as an urban area. Apparently next month, the Census Bureau is supposed to put out new maps for the state that will provide us hardline understanding of what they are going to consider urban. So I can't give you that definite, specific definition tonight. But between now and when we announce the program in July, we will have that information verified by then. The funding source, not the funding source, the funding amount will be 87.5% of the cost to install water and power infrastructure. So that includes anything from, basically when you tap into the public water line, through a water meter, through your on-site, plumbing, and out to the irrigation drip or sprinkler or whichever method that you utilize. And likewise, it'll run from the transformer to the electric meter to all your electric lines on site. So you might be able to plug a refrigerator box into electric on site. So that has been a really big topic of conversation since the end of session back in April. I believe that this one is going to take a little bit of upfront effort when pulling permits and determining contractors. Contractors for public utilities are usually certified by the jurisdiction. So there's going to be some upfront investigation, I guess I would say, to determine how to get this in the ground. But I met with Kim and folks from her office the other day to specifically talk about how permitting in PG County is handled, and it's going to be a lot of work and a lot of effort, but it'll be worth it for folks so that they can get water and power readily available on site for their operation. 2 other programs that I have in mind. They're completely in the very beginning stage of development. Hoping to be able to have a little bit more information, throughout the beginning of 2023. Ultimately, these are going to be, like micro grant or expanded innovation grants that'll help either beginner farmers, for the micro grant, and then the innovative grant would be more established, 5 years of production, and really taking the operation to the next phase of production. So Kim, that's about what I had. I would love to hear comments and questions. Here's my contact information. I really enjoy talking about these operations and the folks that Kim has introduced me to already. I've really truly enjoyed the conversations we've had. So I can throw it back to you, I guess, Kim.
Yeah, thanks so much, Bill. Yeah, if you just want to stop sharing your screen for a moment, and if you can drop your information also in the chat box, that would be awesome. And then we'll just open it up for discussion. See if folks have questions for you.
So hey, I'm needing to move in the spring, and I just got in contact with a he's a farmer, a flower farmer, and he has a piece of land, and I really want to get like a hoop house. He said that there's electricity, and he said that there's water on the property. It's nearly 5 acres, and So listening to what you're having to say now, if there's water currently and there's power currently, there's a way of getting some type of like hoop houses, I believe, or maybe is that the second part of this conversation, Kim?
I do know, and Colleen will probably get into specifics about high tunnels and hoop houses through NRCS. They have a pretty, established program for that. Maybe additional items that can, assist with the hoop house. That might be more of what the micro grant that would be announced in the beginning of the year. We haven't developed the entire list of eligible items that funding will go to, but we are trying to open it up to as much opportunities for folks to expand and improve their operation.
Yeah, because this is small. It's like not quite 5 acres, which is like whoa for me anyway. Yeah, so there, like I said, he says there's electricity and water, so I think I'm covered in that way. But fencing, that's
depending on how you want to lay out your operation, with irrigation and either preparation areas or packing areas or cold storage, there might be some on-site improvements for water and power that program still might be worthwhile looking into.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I literally just met him 2 days ago. So this is like, whoa, oh my gosh, this is the conversation for tonight. So yeah, it's kind of blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, the micro grant that will be coming out in the beginning of 2023. The deer fencing that could be packaged into that grant. Composting improvements, soil testing, nutrient management plan writing. So those are just like a few things that we've already kind of thrown at the board. We need to establish a little bit vast list of eligible items for purchase. So,
well, I'm hoping I can be part of your guinea pig. This worked. This group of everything. So I have your contact information, Bill.
Yes. Yeah. Stay in touch and just listen. Kim will probably send out networking information once a press release has been sent out by the department. So just keep an ear out.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Kim's on it.
Thanks, Michelle. It looks like Stephanie has a question.
Yeah, so Bill, I think, were you on that farm tour at our place, Blue Berwyn Farm, in May?
I might have been, yes.
Yeah, so one of the things that I brought up at that farm tour that we are kind of looking at the next project is honestly buying a farm vehicle. There were several market days this year where like we had to actually take 2 trips just to get all of our stuff down to the market. And so we really, really need a vehicle simply to get stuff to market. And I'm wondering, like, are your mini grants, like, is that something that a mini grant would help cover the cost of?
I'm going to just be honest. I do not believe that vehicles, land, like large tractor equipment, and administrative labor costs is going to be able to be utilized with public funds through MDA. Now, what I would say is that the funding that you can get from us that goes to other items, the money you would have normally spent for those other items might be able to be utilized for or go towards the vehicle.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oops. Thanks, Stephanie. It looks like Renee has a question.
I do. Bill, I wanted to know if some of the land that we are talking about, we don't own it. So if we are applying for this grant funding like you mentioned, deer fencing. One of the projects in the works is regarding something of that nature because they are living where we are looking to do some work. But would that, because it's not owned by my company, my farm, how does that work and play in what these grants look like? For both NRCS, I know it's a little bit different. I've attended some of their stuff, but specifically for the FDA, what does that look like for something that is not under your auspice, under your ownership?
I guess my first question in return will be, do you have a written lease with the actual landowner?
It's a formal agreement to grow there. So
For how long?
they've just extended me. There's no money that exchanges hands.
Mhm.
It is open space, several acres that are not used. And, just knowing what there is in terms of food, we have had conversations in the past regarding this, and using it was one, they said, well, it's unused space, Renee. So more or less it was to use it in a way that the community could benefit, and at the same time that they could learn something in the process because it's attached to a school. So there's an entire project that's being developed with this, but to just define the acreage, it's not under my ownership.
Mhm.
So because it's an agreement, how would that work? Because I know sometimes these funding is tied to if you own it.
So you can apply for the funding as a tenant. So if you have a lease or a formal agreement with the landowner, as long we would like to see a minimum of 5-year leases, if that's possible. If not, depending on what it is that the funding is going towards, if it's not a permanent item that's stuck in the ground, if it's something that can be transitioned to a new location, we would still provide funding for that. But the landowner will be involved in the agreement and understand that state funding is coming on, being utilized on their property by their tenant. And that's the best way I think I can explain it. Did that make sense?
Absolutely. That's kind of the vein I thought we'd be going in. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that question, Renee. John.
Hey, hi, Bill. I'm contemplating using solar energy, removing my farm from the grid. Would that be part of what the government will support?
So you're not the first person that has asked me about that with the urban ag water and power infrastructure. The department does have the ability to make decisions that on certain aspects of what we believe is providing power. I haven't gotten a clear answer on how solar is going to fall into that grant structure. So I'm gonna say for right now it's not a no, but I need to look in a little bit deeper for what the intent of the law was. So me personally, I hope we're allowed to have solar participate in this grant program, but I will follow up with you if I can get either your email or if Kim can pass that contact information off. I know that that's a question that I've gotten on that infrastructure grant prior to tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for that question, John. And I can connect you both via email if that's helpful, Bill.
Thanks, Kim.
Absolutely, I'll send the email too. Yeah.
Do we have any other questions for Bill?
I can ask another question if there's nobody asking.
So I have a question.
Okay.
I guess I joined a little late, so I didn't get to hear all of your presentation. if an individual is receiving funding from NRCS for, let's say, a well project, and they need additional funding to complete the project, would they be able to apply for one of those mini grants to complete that?
Well, if you're talking about a well and then, the associated plumbing beyond that, that would still, we wouldn't associate any payment towards the well, but we could provide assistance on the on-site plumbing, the irrigation, and, and things like that. We're going to try not to double dip between NRCS and MDA money as best we can, but we also want to make sure that we're providing the most monetary assistance to folks as we can.
Right. Well, because one of the things that I'm realizing is that, since COVID, a lot of the cost for some of these projects has quadrupled. When I bought my land a couple of years back, I got an estimate to put in a well of under $10,000. Final project cost just to drill a well, 425 feet, ended up being over $30,000. Yeah. So here I think I'm borrowing all the money I need from the USDA to complete these projects. And now I'm finding myself in a position where I'm having to come up with a whole lot more money to get the projects completed. And there's no additional funding there. The amounts that the NRCS are allocating for these projects haven't increased to cover these increased costs. So even for the high tunnels, it's like, okay, you gave me $7,500 or $8,000 or whatever for a high tunnel, and actually high tunnels now are costing upwards of $20-some thousand. So I think it would be great if, the state could also turn around and then say, okay, well, we'll help you with additional costs.
I think well, specifically to the urban ag, water and power infrastructure bill, that one was specifically meant to hook to the public or the public utilities. So there was never any mention of, putting funding towards a well. I haven't had the question on whether or not we would make a well and other plumbing in installation part of like the micro grant. That'll be a good question that I'll need to raise with my supervisor.
Right. Because I think where I'm located, we would still be considered urban ag, but we're in a rural part of the state where there's no city water. So we're definitely, one of those locations where having a well or having two wells would be beneficial for our operation.
Okay, I will look into that. I do know that our traditional MAX program, which is Maryland Agricultural Cost Share Program, that funding can go towards wells. So I'm not sure where our cutoff is, and it sounds like we are like in the gray area of language when it came to how the bill was written, during the session. So I will look into, how we can assist with funds towards a well. And again, if Kim can get us in touch with one another, I will provide you additional information.
Okay, well, thank you.
I'm happy to make that email connection, Bill and Gail, and welcome Gail and welcome Fatima. I know you guys just joined a little bit ago. Do we have, before we get to Colleen, who's going to talk about some of the NRCS programs, do we have any other questions for Bill?
I was going to just ask a question about how much funding is that over these 4 or 5 years, so that we know how.
Mm-hmm. So the bill was approved with 4 consecutive years, each of $500,000. And it's my understanding the way that it's written is if we don't spend all of it, we get to it remains with us going into future years. So we don't lose any of the funding if we don't spend it in the first fiscal year. But I believe that some of these infrastructure projects are going to have a pretty hefty price tag. So we'll see how it goes as folks dive into it.
Okay, and it's a competitive grant or whatever it is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just dropped more information in the chat box about Bill's program, so feel free to look through that as well, and we'll be following up obviously with the recording and the slides. I also wanted to mention that there are other resources in MDA that you should take advantage of, and I don't know if Bill, if you want to review a little bit about some of the other programs and other ways that urban farmers can and small farms can engage with MDA.
So one of the other divisions at MDA is, nutrient management. And nutrient management is required for all agricultural operations that annually, exceed a gross of $2,500 a year, or have more than 8 animal units. An animal unit is 1,000 pounds of a specific species of livestock. Nutrient management helps nutrient management is about not utilizing excess fertilizers on your crops. The University of Maryland Extension Services, have a plan writer. I don't believe it's every county, but I believe that they do have the state covered. There is a web page on MDA's website that talks about agricultural nutrient management. The other item that I'd like to bring up is about marketing, agricultural marketing through the department, whether it's farmers market certification or farm to school, or there's a couple new programs about state institutions that need to start purchasing certain percentage of their food locally. We can get you in touch with those folks over in the marketing department. There's been conversations of adding another section of the Maryland's Best brand for urban agriculture. That's very, very early in the conversations, but they seem to be very open to it. So, that would be something that you could sign up for. You would be able to be listed on the Maryland Best Brands website. And then you could actually use that as part of your marketing as well. So in a nutshell, that's the other two, MDA programs that I thought might be, you all might be interested in.
Thanks, Bill. And I dropped links for those in the chat box. I also wanted to drop some of the food safety stuff. So some folks, don't know that you have to sort of apply for an exemption. So you have to, I think it's up to like $28,000, and I need to go back and look. And Bill, you may know, if you produce that or more, then you're required to follow certain FSMA guidelines. I mean, some things you're going to want to do anyway, obviously pertaining to food safety, but there's certain requirements that you have to follow. But there's also, if you're under $28,000, I believe there's an exemption form that you can complete and just, so you're kind of like registering with MDA, but you're basically saying you don't fall under this program at this point in time because you don't meet the threshold for sales.
I don't know that amount, Kim, but
And we might have, Carol Allen and someone from MDA come at some point and talk with you guys about food safety if that's of interest. We'll get some more feedback. I have to look through the feedback from the survey for future open mic nights. And if that's something that's on there, we can certainly do that. But feel free to reach out to me or the contact listed on this food safety page, and we can get that information to you. And the other thing I just wanted to mention briefly is if you do have, fowl, any kind of poultry on your urban farm, and thanks to the new zoning ordinance, poultry is allowed on urban farms, but you do need to register your flock with MDA. And Bill, I don't know if you have any, comments about that, other than registering your flock.
I'm not going to speak about the animal services. I don't know much about them, so.
Not a problem, but I'm sure like Bill or I, we can sort of, if you have questions about that, funnel you to the correct folks.
Yeah, I can find out who to talk to, that's for sure.
So lots of resources within MDA. So, please take a moment when you have some time to peruse their website. Bill, that was awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. It's great to hear that so much stuff is coming up for urban farms and that the department is really thinking about how they can further support urban farms and small farms in the county. Or in the
Okay.
state, I should say, but
Yeah.
we're
I
especially concerned with the county.
I guess another plug, and I don't know if it's still open or not, but Marbitco has the cold storage grant that's out, or loan. I can't remember which one it is. So, but that might be something for your folks to look into if they're at that point.
Absolutely. And they also have an urban ag grant. So I'll try to drop those two in the chat box in a moment. Thanks for bringing that up, Bill.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions for Bill before we turn it over to Colleen? All right. Thanks so much, Bill. We appreciate you. And Bill, I don't know if you're able to hang out for a few more minutes, just in case folks have questions, they could drop them in the chat box if they,
Yeah, I'll hang on, and if there's any questions, I can come back on the mic and
Okay.
and so. But I'll let Colleen have the stage now.
All right. Thanks again, Bill. All right, Colleen, you're up.
All right. All right. Can you see my screen all right?
Looks good.
Okay, cool. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for having me. I do appreciate a lot of the comments about our programs, especially from Anne. And you're not wrong. I completely agree with you. The one thing I will say is that, especially because of a lot of these listening sessions and groups or advisory council that NRCS set up in the past year, they have been getting a lot of feedback from urban farmers, which has caused them to not only start giving out a payment, a COVID relief payment for high tunnels installed within the last few years, but I did get a sneak peek at some of the rates, and they're not, I didn't for sure see the Maryland ones, but it did look like all of the high tunnel rates at the very least were doubling for this coming year. And a little more than doubling. So I do hope that I do think it's been well received on a national level that our high tunnel rates were just awful. So I think my hope is that we will see a change in that for this next program year. Yeah, and I'm hoping we'll also start to see that with a lot of the other rates too, because inflation really got away, and the level at which those get set is so high from our state office that I think they're starting to learn that they need to start restructuring things. And so hopefully, I'm hoping we'll start to see rates that are back closer to their normal, like 90% rates. But that being said, I'll just go through a few of our programs. I have a lot of slides here. I'm probably not going to touch on everything today, but I did get a copy of these to Kim because I wanted you guys to be able to just kind of have the information. But definitely feel free to stop me if you have any, questions as we're going along. This is just a flyer that I included, and I think Kim will send it out probably afterward. This goes through kind of a step-by-step process for how applying for NRCS programs works. It is, pretty general, but it's basically, it all kind of starts with developing a conservation plan, because a lot of what we do really is related to, promoting conservation. Even on urban farms, there's a lot of things that we do. So, that includes the site visit, establishing your records with the Farm Service Agency, and then working with either an NRCS or a Maryland Department of Agriculture or Conservation District, a conservation planner from our district office. We all kind of work together to sort of get these any of our programs out. Then, usually it depends on when things are going on, but at some point during the conservation planning process, we'll make sure to get you an application if there's anything that is, we're identifying as would be a good opportunity for you to apply for cost share, and that we always do, weigh between all of the programs that we're involved in. So that's not just NRCS, but it's also, this MDA, the MAX programs, and probably more programs as they come up. We're just here to provide service. We want you to get the best, bang for your buck. So we try to guide you to the best of our abilities in the ways to do that. Then the fifth step is doing some eligibility documentation. So we are trying to make that a better process, having you work directly with the Farm Service Agency, but kind of introducing you. And they are really great at answering any questions that you might have about this stuff. And I think we're getting to a place where we're starting to streamline this a little bit better than we have been. So that is usually some stuff about, some just required forms that honestly really don't have much to do with urban ag and won't really affect you in any way, but legally we have to collect them. There's one form, the adjusted gross income, that will go through with the IRS, and that is just to make sure that you are not a millionaire. Because we don't want to give money to millionaires. We're trying to give this to people who need it. So things like that, and then we're happy to answer any questions about those as we go along. And then finally, usually around sometime between April and August, depending on the program, depending on the fund pool, depending on the competition, we are usually working with you to sign a contract. And you'll usually get a notice of pre-approval, or we'll give you a call to say that you're pre-approved. And usually it's a couple weeks after that we can sign a contract. We're trying to get better at doing, this is my first year my first full year in PG. I kind of came in the middle of last year. So we're hoping to kind of get this cleaned up a little bit and make sure that all the right communications are going out throughout this process, because we know it is a little bit lengthy. But trying to make sure everyone knows where they're standing as we move through all these various steps. So that is just the basic process of it. As far as who's eligible, we have basically everybody's eligible for the most part. Any urban or small scale, or really any farmers or farm businesses are eligible, nonprofits. If you are an individual business, nonprofit, and you are growing on private land that you lease, or even public land, which is sometimes people think they're not eligible because they're growing on public land, we don't give any of our financial assistance to government entities. But if you are a private entity or one of these other entities growing on public land, you are still eligible for any of these. Community gardens are also eligible. I know there was a little confusion about that, but they are eligible for our programs. And there actually is, years ago, we did have a minimum sales requirement, but that has been removed now for a few years, apparently. So we do not have a minimum sales that you're required to have, or that you need to prove in order to apply for any of our programs. Historically underserved producers, this is something that during the eligibility process, you would identify as. It's all self-determined, so it's beginning farmer, meaning you haven't filed a Schedule F with the IRS for 10 years. Socially disadvantaged farmer, limited resource, meaning I believe Prince George's is somewhere around like $60,000 or $73,000. It changes every year. It's a quick online tool that you verify, or if you're a veteran, you're also eligible as a historically underserved farmer. What this means is that you're available for our HU payment rates, which are higher rates than the typical, than our typical payment rates. And then you are also eligible for an advance payment on your project that's up to 50% of the cost share allocated in your contract. So that can be very helpful. Land ownership. This is something that if you've heard a presentation from NRCS Maryland before, I want you to pay attention to, because we are very quickly unfolding some misinformation and misinterpretations of things that have been going around over the years. So in for land ownership, you do need to show, like, you do not need to own your land. If you own your land, you just need to set up the records with Farm Service Agency and have you listed as the owner. I don't believe that they even require that you see a deed. They just check on the public records. If you are leasing a farm, we can add you as an operator, or it's called an other tenant if there's multiple operators on that property with FSA. And then the other thing that we will need is a lease, a letter, or we do also have a specific form that you can use, but we don't necessarily require just that form. And we need some kind of permission from the person who owns the property that says you can install the practice. Now, in the past, we have said that you had to, not only did they have to give you permission to install the practice, but they had to also be responsible for maintaining that practice. If it had like high tunnels have a 5-year lifespan, and that the landowner is somehow responsible for part of your contract or maintaining that building after the fact, and that is not the case. So if all this does is says that your landlord at the time of signing the contract is giving you permission to install the practice, it does not hold them accountable for anything in your contract. It does not hold them accountable to maintaining the practice. If a year, ideally this wouldn't happen, but if a year or two later after you install it, they kick you off the property and rip down the high tunnel, nobody's accountable for that. It's, a shame, but there isn't. So we're really trying to get this message out that some of the stakes that we've had in the past are not quite as severe, I think, as people, or the policies are a little bit different than they actually were being interpreted. So hopefully that is helpful and opens some doors for some people that maybe weren't able to before. And then this is our payments. I think many of you know, but for those of you who don't know, our payments are all reimbursement payments. So that is once you've installed it and it's certified and we go out and we say, yes, it meets standard, then we pay you we have you sign the papers and you get paid via direct deposit. In normal times, it should take about 2 weeks to get that payment from the time that it gets certified to the time that it shows up in your bank account. Assuming everything goes right and there's no changes that need to be made, major changes that need to be made. The only time where this is different is if you are one of those historically underserved folks getting an advance payment, in which case you are, then you can get up to 50% of your contracted amount ahead of time, also through a direct deposit payment. Okay, so a few of our practices, the first main one, the one we're probably known best for, is our high tunnel program. So there's a few rules that I put here for our high tunnels. For growing, it needs to be grown, everything needs to be grown in the ground or in raised beds. Right, as of right now, we cannot build these for anything growing on tables or hydroponics. So that may change. I think it likely will change with the new farm bill, but for right now, this is required by law and language. So this is what we're limited to. Yes, but we do allow raised beds up to 18 inches. Livestock cannot be housed in the high tunnels. It's required 6 mil plastic with a 4-year manufacturer warranty. If you buy a kit from most places that sell high tunnels, this is what you will get. So that's pretty common. Most high tunnels will fit that. Also, just logistically, as we're working with you, as we're out on our site visit, we're helping write a conservation plan, it's really important to know what size you want. And we're certainly more than able to help you with that. That's not something that you need to know when we show up, but it's something we want to definitely figure out before we get too far along in this process, because that changes the payment rate that you get. And we want to make sure that people are getting all the money that they deserve for these, as well as the location for where you want to put it. Because once we sign the contract, we can't change where that high tunnel goes. It needs to be within a certain area of the field that we plan it in. So those are just two things, on a smaller property, the location may not be a very big deal because if you move it over 100 feet, you're still in the same field. But for people maybe growing on like a 5-acre plot, if your property is broken up into a few different fields, that might be more of an issue. The other main requirement is that even though we don't have a monetary requirement, we do require that you are currently growing some kind of crop because this is all about resource improvement. So it is a requirement that you need to be, we don't just put high tunnels usually where nothing is growing at all or has grown at all. So even if it's not on that specific spot, if you're growing crops elsewhere on your property, that's what we usually like to see. And like I said, or maybe I didn't say this, but there's higher payment rates that are now available for smaller sized tunnels, and the specifications of what exactly that is, we're still waiting for this coming year. But I believe if it's similar to last year, it's going to be around an 1,800 square foot, which would be a 60 by 30-ish size one, is usually around where that cutoff ends up being for the smaller tunnels. And the rate I think I saw for that was, again, not to know, it's not in stone yet or anything, but it was around like $10 a square foot for the smaller sized high tunnels. Oh, did I just miss one? So the payments for the high tunnels are by square foot payment. So the one thing I just caution with people is this is, again, why it's so important to know how big of a tunnel you want going in, because if we contract you for a larger one and you end up going with the smaller one, it may not be possible to get you the smaller rate payment. And so it's really important to know. And then if you do get the smaller rate payment, it's important to know that, or if you decide to build a smaller tunnel, than what you originally were going to, the payment will be lower despite what it's always going to be the per square foot rate of the high tunnel is what you get paid on. So hopefully that made sense. Sorry, I was kind of tripping over my words there. But you don't want to purchase the high tunnel until the contract is approved. That is just so that you are not, being stuck in the draw if something, in the off chance were to happen. It's just to protect you. That's the main reason for that policy. The high tunnel also needs to be installed within 12 months of signing the contract. There are things that we can do to extend that. And there's little buttons we can push in the background, but that does take more of our time. And usually, I think people generally like to get their high tunnels built. So I do try to encourage people to stick to their 12-month mark. But if we have specific events that occur that make it impossible for that to happen, there are some things we can do. The plastic needs to be on in order for it to be certified. The end walls don't necessarily need to be there, but the plastic and the rest of the structure does need to be built to standard. And it's possible that a funding cap may apply to this year, although we are in the middle of setting all of our rules and policies for this year, so I do not know. I will say there is a very strong push from a lot of the people in the state to get rid of the caps or just raise them way higher than they've been previously. So hopefully we can see that too. So not only will we be getting a better payment rate, but then also hopefully, getting rid of or really raising the cap on this as well.
Colleen, quick question.
Oh yeah, sure.
And at the beginning of your presentation, I thought you mentioned something about retroactive payments through some COVID relief funding for high tunnels that were previously installed.
Yep, that's true.
So how do we go about?
So there are high tunnels that were constructed between 2015 and 22 from certain payment years from, I believe, the last 4 or 5 years are eligible for the COVID relief payment. So I have the list of those. We had 3 in the county that applied to.
Oh, so I wasn't on that list?
I did not. Hang on, I can't see who's talking. Is this?
Gail Livingstone.
Oh, you're on the list. I'm working on yours right now. Yep, I'm working on it. Yeah, I'm working on it. It's sort of a drawn out process on my end. So I've been hitting a lot of roadblocks, but you're on my list, and I'm
Okay.
working on it.
Just wanted to check in. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, so yeah, irrigation. Let's see. So the irrigation is one that I'll admit we're still like working on, but trying to get better at figuring out. And it is something that I think after this year we're going to have a lot better handle on. The thing to point out with irrigation is a lot of people are looking for wells. But in order for us to install a well, we also have to install the rest of the irrigation system, and that irrigation system has to meet our standard. So this is, that does require that our techs work with you to build a design, and it does need to be installed to a certain degree. The things that make it meet our standard basically are some of the components that we put in that are the well, if you need the well, or we can run it off, house lines or other things, or, there's a lot of ways that you can hook up irrigation, but typically a well and a pressure tank or some kind of other pump. A backflow preventer is always required, the irrigation underground pipeline, the hydrants or in-ground hookups, your mainline lay flat plastic, whatever type of mainline that you use, and then the actual, T-tape, orchard tubing, wobblers are typically the most common things we see. As far as the irrigation goes, you're required to have 2 years of irrigation history. This is relatively loose, I would say. It basically means that you've been irrigating in some way for 2 years. That might be hand watering. That might be, we've seen all kinds, it might be you filling up a big drum somewhere. It's just putting some kind of individual effort into some kind of irrigation. And so usually we just try to document that in some way, but it's not a real strict and fast rule of how that needs to be documented. So we just like to work with you and get that, any pictures or things like that we can get from you. I would say don't let that hold you back from starting to talk to us, because we can start with designs and get us up to 2 years as well. So there's some flexibility there. You also, the big thing is knowing what your layout's going to be, though. That's proven to be the one big hurdle, is that with folks where you maybe don't have a steadfast kind of design. Like obviously things change a little bit, but you really want to have a good idea of what your bed layout is and what it's going to look like, at least for the next year or two. If you have lots of things that are changing and expanding and moving around, this may be harder, may be a harder thing to do through us, because we do kind of need to know where things are so that we can certify it when you actually install it. The other thing is that the design and installation must meet NRCS standards. I've installed lots of pretty cheap irrigation systems over the years, as I'm sure many of you have. If you don't want to deal with the paperwork and things like that, it may be worth it to do this on your own. Like, this is not something I think that everyone is meant for everyone to do. It does, the system is always going to be a little bit above and beyond. I don't think incredibly so, but to some degree, like you could, if you need water and you need it now, it may be in your better interest to do it on your own. But if this is something that you have a temporary system that's maybe suiting your needs and you have the year to kind of work with us and set this up, then this could be a better option. That could be the right option. I would definitely say when it comes to irrigation, if you can't live without it for another second, I would strongly recommend doing it on your own, or if you have the ability to go through Bill's programs. I think where we hit the most is with people who want wells, because that's such a huge expense. So yeah, so that's just sort of my 2 cents on that. As we get better at these, I'm hoping that things will happen and these will be even more streamlined. And it is a good opportunity, but it may not be the right fit for everyone. The other thing is that there's also funding available through this through AMA, which is almost an identical process to signing up for EQIP. All the deadlines are basically the same. But if you want an advance payment, it's really important to let us know that as we're, taking in your application and working with you on this stuff. Because if you go through AMA, you're not available for the advance payment. If you go through AMA though, they do not require that 2 years of irrigation history. So if that was like a barrier to you, then we could definitely submit you through AMA and see what we might be able to get approved. So yeah, I think that's about that. Other things I won't go too lengthy on, but we also offer pollinator habitat. This is predominantly for seed. You can do a larger scale planting that's on a per acre scale. You can do a smaller scale one that pays on a square foot, which is nice if you're only going to do like maybe 1,000, 2,000 square feet. You definitely want to follow the planting guidance, and I always recommend, I'll tell you this too if we sign up for it, but you always want to make sure to verify your seed order with myself or someone from the district before you purchase it, just to make sure it has everything in it that it needs. Some other practices I want to point out, and some of these I really wish I had more information on right now, but unfortunately some of these we just adopted them a few weeks ago and I don't have a lot of guidance yet. Composting facilities is something that for small scale we are working on developing. We have funding for it. We have small scale funding for that. Something including some kind of a pad, maybe some kind of wooden bins would definitely meet standard. This is something that our engineers would design, but we're also looking into some of these precast bins and putting those on either like a stone dust pad or a concrete pad, and having those meet standard as well. So, as you have interest in things, we can kind of look to see how we're learning as we go with all these new things, basically. It's also for if you have a lot of compost, specifically on farm compost, there's larger like roto tumblers that are out there and a lot of really interesting things. And this can also go to fund those. The two new standards that we have are the raised bed standard and the low tunnel standard. So the raised bed standard, of the little that I know about it, is I don't know the funding rate, but it would be for building raised beds. So it would be for beds that actually had some kind of wood or metal or some kind of frame to them. I think we tried to keep it pretty flexible with what that can be, but it wouldn't just be for raised beds without some kind of frame around them. It's up to 24 inches in height is how high you can go with them. And again, I don't know the payment rates. I hope to know more about that. But if you are interested, by all means, let me know, and we can, that's one we're going to be figuring out as we go this year. The other is low tunnels, which I'm really excited about because this has a 1-year practice lifespan. And my guess, without having seen much of anything about this, is our high tunnels are anything that's 6 feet or higher. So my guess is this will be anything that's 6 feet or less. And these have a 1-year lifespan. So we do not, for 1-year practices, we do not require that landowner concurrence or any permission from the landlord to install. So that if that was a barrier, these may be an option for people who want some kind of tunnel system on their properties. They're also just like smaller and easier to maintain and things like that too. So the other things are, we do offer a lot of soil health practices. So we do like cover crops, crop rotation, reduced till, no-till, nutrient management, soil carbon's a new one we're kind of figuring out as we go, but that has applications for like biochar and, applying that. Again, brand new, really haven't gotten many details on it, but we're figuring that out as we go. Then we have some of our traditional stuff that may apply, which is like gutters and roof runoff systems, rain gardens, and honestly, like a whole lot more stuff. So I always recommend people do go through the concert, let us know, we can do a site visit, and we can really try to like pull out the things and help figure out what are your bigger priorities and what you're interested in, because there's a whole lot of, we have like over 100 practices. So these are just some of the most common ones. The other program that I know I'm running short on time here, but the other program that I really wanted to make sure, especially our smaller farmers in the county know about, is CSP. This is a program that's eligible for ag land or cropland. It's a 5-year contract and it has a minimum annual payment of $1,500. So at the very minimum, you're going to get $7,500 over the 5 years. The payments for this are made up of 2 parts. The main part, most of the money, is this base payment that's based on basically how good your conservation practices are right now. So we would go out when we're doing our conservation plan, we would complete an assessment, plug the numbers into the computer, and based on your acreage and how many existing practices you have, how well you're maintaining your property, things like that, you get extra points, and that calculates a base payment. That's the vast majority of the money for this program. Basically it's a rewards program. The only thing that it requires in addition is that second part of the payment, and that's that on every land use that you are enrolling in the program, you also need to do some kind of enhancement or practice to just, bring your conservation up to the next level. And we'll get into it in a minute, but, sometimes this is a smaller part of the payment. It's usually, oftentimes it's on smaller properties as well. It may just be one thing. It's usually not a particularly expensive thing, or there certainly are lots of very inexpensive options. So this can be a really lucrative plan because a lot of this money can just translate into cash for your business, because as it's a reward for doing a good job as a conservation sustainable farmer. Those annual payments go out every October to November-ish. This year they're going out a little bit later. And then the one thing with this is that you have to enroll your entire operation. So for sure, anything that you own has to get enrolled. But it would only be your ag land. If you're doing the ag land program, it would be all the ag land that you own, plus any that you operate that you lease out. But if you can say that, if you're not going to have control of some of that land, you can opt out of some of that rented land. And then with the forestry, it's the same thing for, that's usually just what people own. So it would only be like the forest land that you own. And, if this program is of interest to you, it can get a little in the weeds, and I'm trying not to do that right now. So I can definitely talk with you more about it, or we can do a site visit and try to explain it a little better. Because it sounds confusing, but in the end, it's actually a pretty simple program. It's complicated more on my end. But like I said, you have to meet that stewardship threshold. I guess I kind of said a lot of this stuff already. And then the application period is usually a little bit later than EQIP. So this is normally around February or March. We haven't gotten the date set for this coming year, so I don't know, but I would guess it's usually around that time. And usually these contracts we sign sometime after the 4th of July, usually. So for ag land, there's no minimum acreage, so it can be any amount of acreage. We include cropland, pasture, farmstead, and headquarters into that. And some of the common enhancements that we have, just to give you a taste, there's a lot of them, like a whole lot of them. And I honestly don't even know what all of them are, but some of the most common ones that we do are monarch plantings. I know that one has a half-acre minimum on it. Sunflower or pollinator plantings, that's usually about 5% of your operation annually gets put into sunflowers. Or your cropland, I would say. Wildlife friendly hay cutting, if you have animals operation, that would, it's just cutting your hay in a way that allows the wildlife to escape. Wildlife boxes, such as bluebird boxes, bat boxes. I've done all kinds of boxes for all kinds of native animals. So there's a lot of choices if you don't want those two, but those are the most common too. And then wildlife food plots of some kinds, a lot of times people do that with beans and corn, but there's certainly lots of other things you can do that with that also. So that's just a kind of idea of what you're looking at. So the NIF is the non-industrial private forest land. For that, just to be considered NIF, that type of forest land, you have to have at least 1 acre of forest. So that's the only requirement as far as that's concerned. But then you also will need to have a forest stewardship plan, and you can get those. We used to cost share them, but they don't. It's just a whole lot easier just to go through DNR. They can usually provide you with a forest plan for, I don't actually know what the fee is right now, but it's not very much. We can, as we're talking with you, if this is a program you're interested in, we can definitely get you that contact information if you need it. Like I said, you have to enroll all the forest land. There is the option to pull the headquarters and associated ag land. So that might be like a meadow or something that, you're not really doing anything, like some kind of pollinator habitat or whatever. We can pull that in. And the reason to do that would just be to get you more money for your base payment, which is like the majority of the payment. And then for some of the enhancements for forest stuff that we do are, again, bat box is very popular. We do bat habitat improvements, which is like is a lot of like girdling trees and things like that. We have brush management, clearing out invasive species, edge feathering, which is kind of creating like a transitional area in a specific way along some portion of a wood line, not the whole thing. We've had people do patch openings where they, if they have, say a 30-acre forest, they cut out like a small half-acre area and clear the larger trees out of that to allow more, diversity in the forest in the middle. And then we also have the shrub and wildlife plantings, which, can be for, anything native, really. We do a lot with folks who on the edge of their woods want to, put in more like hazelnuts and, wildlife friendly types of native shrubs and things like that. And that creates a transitional habitat. It creates forage for the wildlife. And again, these are just some of the options. There's a whole lot more. These are just some of the easier, more common ones. And that is all that I had. This is my contact information. And so, yeah, if you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to me or Kim or really anyone in the district office at any time. And we can definitely get you a whole lot more information about all this stuff if you're interested in anything specifically.
Thanks, Colleen. And thanks for being a guest again. I keep forgetting that you came on sometime last year to talk about high tunnels, and it's cool to see how some of the programs have changed to be more adaptive to urban farms and small farms. So we appreciate you, advocating and working with us. So does anyone have questions for Colleen?
I can't say that I have questions in particular, but I'm super excited about a lot of the stuff that you were talking about. And so, yeah, I'm going to look over the video that we went over tonight, and I'm hoping that I'm going to get a piece of property and soon. And I hope to be able to establish some of these great things you're talking about. Like, I love the wood line, like how you step into the wood line and bring in the animals and the herbs and everything like that into the natural, I guess, surroundings. So yeah, I really like a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. Towards the end, I was especially interested.
Yeah, CSP is a cool program that has been really underutilized. And it's like, honestly, it sounds a little complicated, but it's really not. It's mostly like a lot of annoying paperwork on my end, but it's pretty nice. And people generally tend to get like a little money in their pocket from it, which is nice too. It doesn't all go to just the practice like a lot of like our EQIP program does. So, and it's great if you have forests, because a lot of people aren't doing anything with their forests. So it's just kind of like money for your forest.
I have a question about the CSP. What does the application timeline look like?
So that one is usually February, March-ish. And then we we'll do you, and then again, we're usually signing the contract by July. The application process is kind of similar. Like we have to, do all the eligibility like we do with Equip. But I mean, you probably have most of that done anyway at this point, just be updating a few things. And then we, we do that threshold, but especially with, having been out to your place, like we could honestly do a lot of that probably from memory at this point. It wouldn't be a major update to your conservation plan. And then, it's more of just like a waiting game of like submitting that in. It is a competitive, although we have about 2 million in the state for it right now, 200,000 set aside for organic farmers. And we turned back like a ton of money last year. So I mean, it may be more competitive this year. I don't know. Like I'm pushing it pretty hard because I think it's a really good program for smaller farmers or people with woodland. And I don't know what other people across the state are doing, but last year everyone got funded that applied. So. And then you get a payment every 5 years. And the other cool thing with that is that first, like you have from usually signing, July, but you have a full year to do your first practice, but you get your first payment in October or November. So usually you're getting that first payment before before a lot of people have actually done anything yet. So that can sometimes help fund the upcoming thing that you're going to do.
Colleen, I'm a little puzzled because here I am sitting with these 30 acres of woods and none of these programs were presented to me. I'm feeling a little slighted.
CSP, honestly, like no one really has pushed very hard. Like we really didn't know how to utilize it in the state for a lot of years. It had been discontinued for many years and then it came back in a different form and it's been changed a lot over the years. So, in Southern Maryland, we're, attempting to get the word out more. I'm glad you're here. We are trying to spread it as much as we can. In PG, last year was the first year anyone got signed up for it. And that was like a lot of our last minute, like people as I came in halfway through. So I am trying to promote it now that I'm here, and we I've kind of figured out how this thing works a little bit better. If you're interested, I'd be happy to come out and, get that rolling for you. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I do have a forestry management plan in place. And I think most people at your office would know that. But I guess that my concern is that no one even presented any of those programs to me. And you guys were out there every year at my place. Not you, well, you just came when you came out, but all of the folks that were there before you came out each year, and nobody ever presented any of those programs to me.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's really only been in the last probably 3-4 years that it's really started to get a comeback. And I think some of us picked up on it more than others. I was previously in Charles County. We have nothing but woods in Charles County. So that was very necessary there. But yeah, I'm absolutely, happy. Definitely let me know and we can set up a time to do a site visit and get that rolling for you, get your application in and all that. Because our application deadlines are when they are, but I'm taking them all year round. So I like to get people in as you're interested so that you don't get forgotten when the actual deadline and all the pressure is on. So yeah, we can definitely take care of that for you.
Okay, I look forward to it.
Great.
Good questions. Anything else for Colleen?
I have a really selfish question that's kind of unrelated to this. Is my high tunnel on that list?
I'm working on it. I submitted it. I'm waiting for
I
it
didn't
to
even
get
know this
approved.
money was coming until Kim was like, I heard you're getting money. And I was like, for what?
Yeah, it was very badly rolled out. The guidance is very bad. So I've been trying not to reach out to people until I know for sure that it's coming. But yeah, I do. I'm going to get with you later this week on it. I just have one thing to check in with you got the three people on the list on. But hopefully in the next month we'll be getting it. Hopefully things are moving slow at our state office right now, unfortunately. But it's coming. It should be coming.
Well, thank you for all of your efforts.
Yeah, I'm trying. The government's a big bear to tackle, so we're learning one thing at a time here.
We're excited to have Colleen and some consistency in that office from NRCS. And also Colleen she's actually going to be, she's working with all of our producers in the county, but she's, has a focus in urban ag and small scale farms in our county, as well as Baltimore and DC. So you'll see Colleen around a lot. If you have friends in DC and Baltimore, feel free to send them Colleen's way as well. Hopefully they'll get you some more staffing soon, Colleen, because I know it's a lot right now.
Yeah, and if people do have friends or know producers in, especially Washington, D.C., because that's the only one we set up right now, we do have a very similar listening info session to this scheduled for December 1st at the MLK Library at 6:30, I think. And it'll be myself, but we have Leslie Glover from the NRCS Office of Urban Ag presenting on some of his grants and hopefully some of MAS's grants, which I don't know nearly as much about. There's a lot of grants out there. And then hopefully some of our folks from FSA will also be there. And I had another thing with that. I won't remember it, but it should be a good event. We will be recording it too, and hope to get that out to folks. So,
John.
Yeah, John.
Yes, hey, Colleen, thank you for the presentation. Actually, we have to certify one of our hoop houses. Just
Is
wanted
it
to know
built?
what it's built now. Yeah, it's not
Oh
covered
my
yet.
gosh, let's get that paid for.
Good. I needed to know some more information in terms of like the practice, how I use it. Because I know hydroponics, I know some other things, no. But I'll need to get some of the details in plain English because I barely speak English. So
I can do that.
this request also goes to a lot of the people that I work with who are foreign born and they barely speak English like me. And sometimes these processes need to be like streamlined and simplified so that they know what they're eligible for, what they can do. This is kind of a general question. Is there any effort being done to reach out to those communities that are traditionally didn't deal with NRCS?
I mean, that's pretty much me right now. I am trying to make like better flyers that are less technical because I agree, like I don't understand sometimes what our flyers say. Like we just generally put out really bad PR material. So I am trying to make things that are a little bit easier to like, that are not as complicated. That's like that one blue. I'll send it with the attachments, or Kim will send it probably with the attachments, but try to break it down into like more of a step-by-step. There's a lot of information. There are little things that go along with it. I mean, my main thing is trying to be as much of a resource for everyone as possible so that when you have questions, like hopefully we can just take care of it for you, or we can send you down the right direction, or we can, if you have my phone or email, that would be the main thing I would say is, a lot of our stuff is nationally created. I only have so much time to make like all new materials, although I am trying to make quite a few. But, I would just say use me as a resource. Like I've got people calling me every day asking, questions or having me re-explain things because you got told once, maybe like a year ago, but you don't remember. And that's, that's fine. Like, I don't mind re-explaining it. I have to, it took me a long time to learn all the rules, so I don't expect everyone to just pick it up overnight. But a lot of our stuff over the years has been made out to be a lot more complicated than it is too. And I think that's like a goal of like myself and Kim and everyone in the office is to try to make it simpler for everybody.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo that. I think that I think you add a lot of value by re-explaining. I think Kim just put that in the chat. And I think also, like, yeah, you simplifying things, because I think some of the stuff does seem very complicated. And the way, like in your presentation, the way you just said, like, this sounds complicated, but it's not. I think that just
Yeah.
makes it more reassuring that, like, yeah, maybe I'll apply, you know, so please continue to do that because it is greatly appreciated, because this stuff is intimidating.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like, if I'm doing my job well, like when this presentation, it sounds complicated. And if you have things in the nitty gritty, we can like deal with that. But sometimes it's like stuff you may not even want to know it, like, because you'll still get the money and it'll be fine. So, but yeah, well, happy to work with everybody however we can to make things simpler.
Are there any other questions for Colleen?
No, I just have one other quick question, Kim. If anyone knows, do we have an extension agent now for Prince George's County?
We do, and he's with us this evening. Charlie, would you like to introduce yourself? Charlie, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. My friend called me and I was on the phone talking to her, but I wasn't trying to add to the conversation.
Oh, we were just trying to do an introduction because Gail was wondering who our extension agent is in Prince George's County.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. Hi, Gail. I'm Charlie Sasser. I'm the agriculture and marketing extension educator for Prince George's County, and we're located here in Clinton. And I'll drop my email if you want to reach out or talk about anything, any questions, any business planning, any resources, anything like that. We're here to help with any of it.
Yes, I would love to have you come out, take a look at some things on my property. I know I was talking with Megan today from Dicot Farm, and she had mentioned to me that the extension agent in Charles County would come out from time to time to help them with identifying different diseases and things that would pop up on their property when they were there. And I'm having some issues in one of my tunnel, and I would really like to get an expert eye on it.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I can come out, and we have state specialists for that. So if I don't know what it is, I can take pictures and send it to them, and maybe they can come out. Or generally speaking, if I don't know it, we have enough resources, we can get it identified along with some solutions for you.
Excellent. Look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Colleen, folks are asking for your contact information, so I don't know if you can drop that in the chat box as well, because I'll send the chat out with the recording, you know, on Thursday, most likely. All right, so I am going to sort of officially close this out, but we'll hang around for a few more questions. So thank you so much, Colleen. We really appreciate you coming out, and we appreciate Bill coming out as well, and attending our open mic night tonight and spending some time with our urban farmers. And we look forward to our farmers connecting with you. Again, we'll send out the recording and the slides as a follow-up, and Bill and Colleen's contact information. So thank you all very much.
No, next month's paycheck, I'll pay. Oh, 2 months paycheck. Now, on the other hand, if you are earning little